Welcome, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Gaurav. She will be discussing the importance of nutrition in optimal cell function, pain management, performance, and recovery. As someone who has lived with arthritis and managed pain for 10 years, I know firsthand how debilitating and emotionally draining it can be. The constant discomfort is a daily struggle that affects not just your body, but your mind and your spirit as well. That's why I'm grateful that we have an expert here today with over 20 years' experience and a deep understanding of the human body. She's helped countless patients alleviate their joint pain and reclaim their lives. So now I'm going to hand you over to Goril. Goril, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
So happy to be here, and thank you so much for the introduction. Good to see many people on. Brief intro about myself before I go on. As you said, I've been working 20 years as a physiotherapist, or actually 23 years. I stopped counting at a certain point, just knowing, no, just kidding. But so I've been working the last 16 years in a big sports medical center in Amsterdam, where we do general patient group. We work with sports rehab and also top athletes. And what I've seen in the last 20 years, I think, is something that a lot of you people, or you therapists, and also people in here can relate to, is that there is a gap between what we know about treatment and also what we know about nutrition. And that's what I experienced when I got to know Zinzino and this concept back in 2015, that I realized that actually I skipped a big step when it comes to health, when it comes to pain management, when it comes to giving the body the right tools to recover and deal with the conditions that I often see in patients, like you also talked about, Shivani. I'm going to share a presentation, and I'm going to try to bring you a bit into my world, the way I look at nutrition, and when it comes to the daily, so the things I work with, the joint and muscle pains in the practice, but also around sports, a bit more the sports rehab side of it. And also what I think is important is that what we see more and more is that nutrition has a big role in, or starting to get a bigger role when it comes to in the general physiotherapy practice, and also how to improve functions that way. So I'm going to try to keep it a bit short. Bear with me. It's a huge topic, so I'm going to try to evidence is around this topic. We know that when we look at nutrition, it is optimal cell function is the basics of what we do. And that's also where I saw that the nutrition part really fit into my work as a physiotherapist. As a long time ago, let food, medicine, and medicine be your food. That is what we are. So we are what we eat, and we are what we absorb. Long time ago, meaning that the food we ate was rich, full of vitamins, minerals, microphytonutrients, beta-glucans to support the innate immune system. We had a lot of fibers, healthy fats, and a very good balance when it comes to omega-6 and omega-3. And these fatty acids, essential fatty acids, we need to get through nutrition every day, so through the food we eat. For people that are not too familiar with these fatty acids, omega-6 is pro-inflammatory and omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. And having these fatty acids balanced is a really important thing when we look at general health, when we look at inflammation, and when we also look at cell function. The food we eat today is mostly a lot man-made food, ultra-processed foods that are low in key nutrients. It's very much sugar in our diets, empty calories. We have deficiencies in imbalances between the fatty acids that I talked about, the omega-3 and omega-6. And that means that we get also an imbalance when it comes to pro-inflammatory compounds and anti-inflammatory compounds. And that has an effect on our body on a daily basis. When we look back, when we look at the history of omega-6 and omega-3s, then we see that we are made to have a 1-to-1 ratio. What we see that science recommend is that we should have a ratio that should be below 3-to-1. When we look at the history, and when we look at the mass production that started around the 1960s, we saw an increase in the ratio between these fatty acids. And going further on until today, the average ratio between omega-6 and omega-3s is around 15-to-1 in Europe. Looking at other parts of the world, US will be more between 25 and 50-to-1. So meaning that we have 25 times more inflammatory compounds in the body than anti-inflammatory compounds. So when we look at that, that has an effect on our bodies on a daily basis, the way we deal with our immune functions, but also the cell function, of course, meaning that it affects every tissue in the body. So what happens when we have a disbalance? It means that we are made of, we start with one cell, which it develops into different tissues, different organs, and to our bodies. So it has to do with brain, it has to do with immune system, but also heart, liver, all the organs, intestines, but also joints and muscles need to have a balance between these fatty acids, meaning we need to balance the inflammation. So what happens when these the cells get imbalanced and we have more inflammation in the body than anti-inflammatory compounds, means that it affects all these different parts of our body. And every cell in the body has a cell wall, and in this cell wall the fatty acids are incorporated. When we have an imbalance between these fatty acids, we have reduced function in every cell in the body. In every tissue, it means the brain function, heart, immune system, but also affects the joints and how we deal with wear and tear, but also the different inflammatory diseases. And when we get a healthy cell, we have a cell wall that's permeable enough to let nutrition in and let waste out, meaning we have an optimal functioning cell. The imbalanced cell is more like a golf ball, and the balanced cell works more like a sponge. It absorbs nutrition, it feeds the cell. So we are what we eat and we are what we absorb. And if we have these disbalances between the omega-6s and omega-3s, the fatty acids, it will affect the way our body works. So we know that having a balance above 4-to-1 compromises cell function. When we look at the science and keeping it under 3-to-1, that's where the body thrives. When we look at the recommendations, for example, from the World Health Organization, it's a consensus that we should stay under 5:1, but being lower in the ratio means that you have a better balance between these fatty acids. So when we look at science, and I think that's where at least what I see a lot of people in my field, so physiotherapists, other therapists that work and deal with problems on a daily basis, is that we need science to back up what we do. Of course, evidence-based is something that's a part of the practice I work with. And I think that the good thing is, and what we've seen the last couple of years, is that also for that nutrition and the science around nutrition, the research done around nutrition really supports the effects on the body. And that's what I want to show you a bit today, because I think that's where we can understand what this imbalance does and what we can really improve when we get the right nutrition in, balancing the inflammation and absorbing the food we eat today better. But also the fact that what we've seen earlier on, that the way we eat today doesn't give us the right nutrients. So meaning that supplementing our diet to stay balanced is an important part on dealing with sorry, I saw that my internet was a bit unstable, but dealing with everything from problems, degenerative problems, to disease, but also to the daily activities and sports and recovery. In sports, I think that nutrition has always been a part of, it's been very common to use nutrition as a tool to better performance, but also that supplements have been a part of the routine they've done to get better results when it comes to muscle function, when building strength, but also to the recovery. So I think that when we look at the sports, it's been looking into rehabilitation. So then I mean more the part where the physiotherapy, where I work, looking at people that have hip replacements, people that have inflammatory problems like shoulder pain, back pains, to look at nutrition as a part of it, but less in the day-to-day, the treatments that we've done, even working in a field or in a practice that focus on more the holistic approach around nutrition. And so there has been a lot of change the last couple of years, and especially the last 8 years that I've been working with Zinzino, that nutrition gets a bigger part of the treatments that we do, or to deal with the results we have in the treatment. So when we look at cell function, as I said, the omega-3 to 6 balance is a really important thing for optimizing cell function. And if we look at, because it has an integral role in the cell membrane function, balancing the fatty acids, as I said, give you reduce inflammation. It optimizes the absorption of nutrients, get all the cell functions, so the tissues, the organs, and the body works the way it should do. When we balance the omega-6 and omega-3, we also make sure that the cell renewal and the cell repair in the body is at its best. So when we reduce tissue inflammation, we get better effects of either pain reduction, but we also get better effects of the training we do. And when we look at it, so things I deal with on a daily basis in the practice has, as I said, a big role in that, the inflammatory processes. So it could be a shoulder, it could be back pain, it could be other conditions. But what I think is important to understand is that if you have too much inflammation, if people come in and they get total knee replacement, the fact that they have more inflammation will affect the way the rehab will go. So when we look at reducing the inflammation, we get better balancing the fatty acids, we get reduced inflammation, we improve the cell function, meaning that we need that reduction in inflammation to be able to do the normal healing of tissues. We also need the reduction in inflammation to be able to start exercising, improve joint mobility, to build strength when we start to do the muscle rehab and the strength, building strength to improve function, like walking, like all the functions around rehab. So really get the body back into the state where it should be to be able to and improve the functions that we need for a patient to be able to walk again, to be able to do sports and get back into life where they and the activity where they used to have. So getting the right cell function, it will also alleviate joint stiffness and it will reduce the pain. So having these fatty acids in the right balance also improves, as I said, the muscle functions. And also what we see is that, which is important in the work we do, it also improves the muscle protein synthesis, meaning that we can have a better buildup of muscles and less breakdown when we do exercise. It also has an effect on the collagen formation, which means that it also helps in the healing process around injuries. And also when we look at the fatty acid profile, it also has a very positive impact on skeletal muscle mass. So when we have an injury, we might have a period of immobilization where we can't do the things that we should do. So it could be walking, it could be the sports we do, but that we need to stop exercising or stop doing some activity. And in that period, having the right balance and the right cell function will also help in the not decreasing the muscle mass when we are inactive, which is a really important part for getting back into to daily activities, but also getting back to sports after injury. And which is another very important part, I think, in the optimizing the cell function, is that we improve immune system, and it also reduces the inflammatory diseases. So those are just, this is of course nutrition and cell function. it's a huge topic, and I think we could talk about this for days, but these are some important things when we look at muscles and joints, and when we look at optimal function, but also about rehabilitation and sports and activity. What we see about pain, and we know that people with a high omega-6-3 ratio, that's associated with more pain conditions, meaning that people with a high ratio and more inflammation often have more pain problems. That could be various conditions, but the high levels of omega-3 will affect also the how we deal with the pain situation. And of course, more inflammation gives more pain in the body. What we see is that when we get this balance, as I said earlier, it could help reduce the intensity of joint pain, joint stiffness, tenderness, swelling, and discomfort. And it's also when we look at going into a bit deeper into the joints, we see that the synovial fluid, so the fluid in the joints, you can even measure the fatty acids in the joints, and a higher ratio of omega-6 will also give inflammatory results. So it's interesting when they start to look at the omega-6-3 ratio in different conditions, but also in different situations like joints, and how that affects the joint in its mobility. What we also see is, for example, that right omega-6-3 ratio has an effect on post-exercise muscle soreness. So it reduces delayed onset of muscle soreness, and because what we have with an exercise situation is that exercise creates inflammation, and that will affect, which is a natural way. So for us to be able to build muscle mass and increase our muscle strength, we will have some micro damage in our muscles which cause inflammation. But we don't want to have the excess inflammation. So that's why it's very important for us to have the right levels of omega-6 and omega-3, so we actually get only the necessary, the needed inflammation to increase muscle strength, but not the excess inflammation that will give us symptoms on longer. And we also know that excess inflammation gives more tissue damage. So that's not what we want when we are working on the muscle buildup. The things that we see, there are lots of nutrients that support pain reduction and how we deal with pain. But some of the things that we see in the science today is the omega-3s, which has a big role in the anti-inflammatory effect. We look at the fruits and vegetables, grains. So the flavonoids is one part that we can see studies on that also have reduce inflammation. The group of vitamin minerals is also, of course, different parts will have different roles in pain management. Curcuminoids, the same, and prebiotics, which is also an interesting development, because the gut-brain connection is more and more present also in the field of treatments and therapy, because it has an effect on the pain. So of course, when we reduce inflammation, naturally we will also have, especially the excess inflammation, we will have pain reduction. Same with the flavonoids. What's interesting is to see that some of the parts of the vitamin minerals also have an effect on neuropathic pain, like magnesium, nerve pain. We see that vitamin D also gives an effect on the musculoskeletal pain. So all these things have an effect on how our body deals with pain or could improve pain. What's important also when we look at some nutritional compounds is that it manages oxidative stress. And what we know is that oxidative stress gives inflammation, but also the other way around. More inflammation gives more oxidative stress. So by adding nutrients that support the function or reduce these functions will also give the normal effects of also, for example, in training, that gives us much more oxidative stress, but we don't want to have the increased inflammatory reaction because of the that it supports even more oxidative stress. So that's why the role of, or that's where we see that the role of these nutrients can help you also manage this, and also manage, for example, muscle soreness. What we see more and more research around is also what the gut does to our how we deal with pain, but also how we can reduce pain by adding enough fibers to our diets, supporting the gut bacteria, feeding the gut bacteria, and also central nervous system pain, which means that it's not that we're only going to use one of these parts to reduce pain, but all of these components that is a healthy diet and should be a part of a healthy diet, contribute to the pain management. But what we've seen is, of course, that the way we eat today and what most people can't get right is, because of also the way the food industry works, is the omega-6 to ratio, but also we don't have enough fibers in our diets and we lack vitamin minerals. So that's where supporting the body with good food and also products to optimize these functions will also help us deal with different conditions. Shivani just talked about arthritis, and that's of course an inflammatory condition, which means that adding these or balancing a diet with different nutrients will help optimizing the cell function, reducing the inflammation, work with the pain management, which means that she can do training or treatment and get the optimal results of the time she puts in and the effort she does and the exercise she does to support the body. And then we just talk about pain, and this is of course something that these different compounds also support brain function. It supports the heart, the way the oxygen is the oxygen uptake, because it also helps with or it optimizes the heart function. So there's a lot of things. So now I'm just focusing on the pain, but there's a lot of things that will improve and that we need to improve by focusing on having the right levels of essential fatty acids, vitamin, minerals, but also the prebiotics and having a good gut health. Also, having a good gut health supports the immune system, which is important in general health, and also working around, if it's in sports, it helps with also, of course, optimizing the time, the training time we can do, and because it reduces inflammation, it has an overall effect on the body's inflammational levels. We're going to go a bit deeper into omega-3 and sports, because there are different reasons for or actually to different things that we need to focus on when it comes to omega-3s and the effects that we can have in sports, because the dietary intake is of course important, and the levels you have in your body depends of course on the dietary intake. The fatty acids we get, the omega-3s that we get through food, and omega-3s, we have the plant-based omega-3s, which are more the nuts and the seeds, and also the marine fatty acids, which we talk about today as a very important part of increasing the omega-3 levels. So the fish, the fatty fish, and the fish oil, and the algae supplements. We also see that your levels of omega-3 also depends on your physical exercise. So what you do, the levels of physical exercise you do, and how much you train will also have an effect on your levels of omega-3 in the body. We also have genetic variation, meaning that the different people will have different you have genetic variations in the way you absorb omega-3s, and of course also your metabolic turnover, meaning that also the way you metabolize the fatty acids will also have an effect on that. That's also different from person to person, but also influenced by exercise. And what we also know that is that the omega-3 index is a very, it's an important indicator to look at the health status in the humans. The omega-3 index should be between 8 and 12%. For also, it has a protective, it also protects when it comes to cardiovascular disease. And of course, having enough omega-3 makes sure that we level out the omega-6 and omega-3 in a good balance. Potential effects on omega-3 in the body is, for example, also then we look at more, as I said, omega-3s has an effect on different parts of the body, in all parts of the body, but when we talk about brain, it has to do with the cognitive processing. When it comes to, in this case, we're to speak about injuries, it has a positive effect on the muscle protein synthesis. When we have enough omega-3s, then the protein levels are low, the omega-3s will also help in this muscle protein synthesis, so that we have the right muscle buildup and less breakdown when it comes to exercise, for example. And exercise is, of course, the exercise we do, the training that we do, but think about exercise also when we talk about rehabilitation of patients and the care after injury or surgery. muscle loss is, as I said, the muscle loss during immobilization is an important part where omega-3s have a positive effect. The oxidative stress, I also mentioned that reducing the inflammation will also have a positive effect on the oxidative stress and the other way around. It has positive effect on the muscle soreness, so after exercise, and also on muscle damage. So reducing the inflammation levels will also reduce the muscle damage, which means that all these parts have an important role when it comes to recovery. And that's where we see that especially optimizing that cell function with the omega-3s have a very positive effect in rehab patients, but also in top athletes, or athletes and top athletes when it comes to recovery. And we know that recovery is the most important, almost the most important part of improvement when it comes to exercise, because when you get that recovery, you can put more hours in, you'll have greater muscle buildup than breakdown when we have these levels right. So very important to add the omega-3s in. When we also look at what the ratio between the arachidonic acid and the EPA does. EPA is a part, of course, of the marine fatty acids. We have EPA, DPA, and DHA, and the arachidonic acid is the omega-6. And we see that when we have a high ratio between these fatty acids, and this looked at as a important biomarker in cardiovascular events, it increases cellular inflammation. We mentioned that earlier, increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, and also increases the prevalence of depressive symptoms. So you see that in different parts of the body, this high ratio will have an effect on different organs, different diseases or symptoms. So why, how do we know what we look like on the inside? And that's where the blood test, the dried blood spot test, comes in. So with 1 drop of blood, you can have a look into your future and how your health will be long term. And that's really powerful. So to be able to know what we need to focus at and nutrition, we need to look at, because what we see is that a lot of people use supplements, eat healthy food, and think they do the things right, but they don't know what's going on the inside. And that's where we test the red blood cells. By looking at the red blood cells, we get an impression of the fatty acid profile, testing 11 fatty acids in the blood and 6 nutritional indicators. And here you get your own results on your omega-6 level. You get a total protection that you have from the fatty acids in your blood. We also look at the omega-3 index, how much omega-3 do you have in the blood. It also measures the cell membrane fluidity. And that's what I talked about in the beginning, that the cell wall needs to be permeable enough to let nutrition in and waste out to have the optimal function. And we also test a couple of other nutritional indicators, and also your first immune response, because the omega-6 is not only a bad, absolutely not an only bad thing in the body, but it has to do with the first immune response. So when we deal with bacteria, viruses, but and for example, if you cut your finger, we need to have that first immune response for the body to heal well. So that first immune response is of vital importance, and where the omega-3s has a positive role, and then the omega-6 has a positive role, and then the omega-3s will come in, dampen down the inflammation, and then go on to the healing process. So that's why it's also so important to have this balance when we have an acute injury, and having higher levels will get the silent inflammation, which is the damaging part of the inflammatory process. So what we can do is that we can, by a drop of blood, as I said, we can track your results and progress, and we can see the results within 120 days. So getting your own results to see how your body looks like on the inside, and taking it from guess-based to test-based, showing the results, and also track the progress you have by implementing more omega-3s in your diet. We work together with Vita's renowned lab in Norway that, as you can see, have big universities and hospitals as their customers. And they're an independent lab that will do the testing, and we get the results in an anonymous code that is only linked to this number. So it's not there's no personal information linked to this test. So what we see out of these tests are that we have 75% of the people that will be out of balance in the red zone, meaning that they have a ratio between 12 to 15 to 1, so 15 times more omega-6 to 1 omega-3. So 16 or 15 times more inflammation. The people that would take a supplement, because a lot of people today are conscious about the omega-3s as a very important part in what we do to feed our body right and to support the body functions. And what we see is that people that take supplements already often have levels around 7 to 1, 10 to 1, meaning that they're still not balanced, which has to do with the quality of the supplements they take. There's a lot of different omega-3 supplements on the market, but there's also a lot of bad quality supplements. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about why the people we see that test and get into a balance that is around 3 to 1 or better, why the products we use are different and support the body in a different way. What we see in worldwide is from the around 1 million tests that we have done and looking at the fatty acid profile, is that 95 to 97% of the people we test are unbalanced. And of course, that's dramatic. That's where we see that we can improve so much when it comes to general health and the symptoms and the conditions we have. What's the difference between why is the balance oil why does the balance oil give different results? than other omega-3 supplements. So what we need in the body, I'm going to take you back a bit to the refining process of a fish oil supplement, because of course, when we look at omega-3s, we find them in fatty fish and algae. And most of us will use an omega-3 supplement to add into our diet to fill the gap in the omega-3s that we have, so reducing that omega-6-3 ratio. And what we see is that in the refining process of fish oil, they need to remove toxins from the fish oil, and that's of course a very important part of keeping a good quality and a high quality fish oil. But it also takes away the natural antioxidants, the polyphenols that's in the algae. So we have the algae with the omega-3s and the polyphenols gets eaten by the fish. We eat either the fish or we make a fish oil supplement. It's also possible to make an algae supplement, and still the refining process needs to be done in both products. So when we look at it, we need to have a high quality fish oil, and the polyphenols that get removed from in the refining process needs to be added back in. And that's where Syncino has made different products, a balanced product that's different to most products on the market, because it contains 40% of oil, which is a polyphenol that's very close to, and very similar to the natural antioxidants in the algae. And by doing that, it works as a chaperone. So the omega-3 product is a very unstable and sensitive product. By adding the olive oil back in, it works as a chaperone, so transporting the omega-3s through the digestional system, but when it meets the body temperature, it keeps it fresh and stable, so it can be transported into the cells in the body. And that's where we test with our balance test. And of course, another difference to this product is that vitamin D3 is added in. We talked about that earlier. We also see deficiencies in vitamin D3, which is also an important part of the concept we work with, because we also do vitamin D3 testing. And it's dosage by weight, because we need to, based on the body weight, people will need different dosage than one size fits all. So that's the unique combination of the balance oil that we work with, and that will help you reduce the or get the right levels of omega-6 and omega-3. When we look at, we also have research done on this product. And what we see is that compared to other omega-3s on the market, so krill oil, concentrated omega-3, cod liver oil, and the balance oil tested by an independent party in Norway, we can see that the balance oil is staying fresh and potent for more than 35 hours under certain conditions, where we see that other products oxidize earlier. And that will have an effect on the omega-3s, and the fact that it goes rancid before it gets through the system means that you don't get the effects of the product like you should do. What we also talked about, the importance of the balance in the cells. So of course the omega-6-3 balance we can help optimize with the balance oil. So that will have, of course, the improvement, the functions around heart, brain, immune system, but also the effects around pain management is clear, and the science also supports the results, or we see results there, and the science support those findings. So that's important. When we look at the gut, of course, we need to, with the food we eat today, we see that that it has an effect on the gut health, on the gut bacteria, and because of the lack of fibers we have in our diets, we need to restore the gut health. And that's where, and this is a topic on itself that we could also talk for days about. But that's where we, to also help the gut function, reduce the inflammation, and also which has an effect on the pain management, but also on the overall health, is adding the fibers back in. And that's where we have Cincino's Cinobiotic, which is a fiber blend of 8 different types of fiber that will balance the gut in different stages in the colon, and feed the good bacteria and restore the gut lining, which is really important, as we've seen in also optimizing the function. Also, adding the fibers back in and restoring the gut helps, together with the optimal omega levels, to absorb nutrients. And different nutrients have, of course, different, had, as we see, in different effects on pain, also on muscle function, muscle buildup. So that's where getting the nutrients in with Extend, which is a very, very smart vitamin and mineral microphytonutrients. So you get all the things you need in one in one product, and it supports the innate immune system, and it gives the body what it needs every day, and that's where it supports all the different functions in the body. We look at Viva. Viva is another supplement that we added to what we call the health protocol. So these 3 products restore the balance and restore the gut, but also give support from the vitamin, minerals, and the microphytonutrients. Is Viva a nootropic supplement that helps restore or at least give support to brain functions, to stress relief, and which also is a very powerful supplement when we look at people competing in sports, to actually give resilience to the athlete, and for other people it could also help restore or to support sleep, which of course is an important part in general recovery, but also when it comes to recovery in sports, and to optimize the recovery time. So this is a concept that will optimize you on every level, and that will help you restore or to give you what the food today doesn't give you. And as we've seen, the science supports food, so getting the right nutrition in, and seeing that there is a gap that we need to fill. The supplements that we use is actually food in tablet form. It's the fatty fish we don't eat, it's the fibers we don't get. This is a really powerful supplement or supplement range to help support the patients we see, the sports people will see, and to really improve those results that we have in treatment. So that was everything for me today.
Thank you so much, Carol. That was really, really interesting. I do have a question. I realized very earlier on that the less you move, the stiffer you get with arthritis, and movement is so important. And it's a chicken and egg situation. When you hurt, you don't want to move because you're hurting yourself. And if you don't move, you don't get the synovial fluid. And that was interesting. If you could just elaborate a little bit for me regarding fatty acids and the synovial fluid, which was something I had never known about.
No, it's interesting to see that when they look at the synovial fluid, they can see they test the fatty acid profile, and of course, like we know that if we have too high levels of inflammation, so we have too much omega-6, that will give inflammation in the joints, and we know that inflammation comes with stiffness, it comes with pain, so meaning that we can go in on in the different tissues and different parts of the body to see locally will support the fact that we need to balance these fatty acids on a general level, because we don't do that on a single joint or a single tissue, but it's adding it back into our diet that will support the whole body, and that will have an effect on these different aspects of pain conditions, or yeah.
And yeah, balancing the fibers as well. I mean, this is just all new information for me today, is that fibers help with nerve function.
Yeah, and with nerve pain. So what's really interesting is to see that it's what we also often think about is gut when it comes to immune system,
Yeah.
gut when we're talking about the brain gut connection.
Yeah.
But it also it communicates through the vagus nerve also when it comes to pain. So it's not only the local the absorption and the gut functions, but we also see that it has an effect on pain. So that's where I think it's important, or for me also was a bit new to the fact that gut health also has different effects than we've seen earlier.
Really interesting. Thank you very much.